Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2012, it's a Honda Accord, and we're going to be replacing the front brake pads. Now in this particular case, we're going to try to save the customer some money, and we're going to resurface the rotors themselves. And the way we're going to do that is we have to get in the back of the rotor, right here with a screwdriver, or in the brake pad, get in the back like this, and then you slowly put a little pressure on it, and you'll see that the piston recesses back inside the bore, and this way here we push the piston all the way back in, and it makes it a little bit easier later on. Plus we're checking these slide pins to make sure that they're sliding the way they're supposed to. As you can see, they slide correctly. Next thing we're going to do, so we're going to take out this bolt right here and this one. We're going to take the caliper and we're going to relocate it to the side, down in the back underneath the bottom over here. You'll see there's these bolts right here that hold the mounting bracket onto the car. We're going to remove this one and the one up on top. But let's get this out of the way first, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to take these two bolts out here, this one and this one. And then what we're going to do is we have to remove the rotor from the car. So I'll show you an easier way to get these screws out, because sometimes they can be very difficult. So let me grab some tools and we're going to get started. These screws here, just take a driver or any kind of, and hit them nice and sharply. And the same thing here. Alright, and that'll make the screws loosen up enough that you could take them out by hand. I use a driver to get them out, but you could do it with the screwdriver also. And they come out fairly easy once you hit them. A couple of times they come right out. So we're going to take these screws out, because this is how we're going to remove the rotor from the car. We're going to keep these screws because we need to reuse them again. Okay, take that out also, and put them on the side because you're going to use them. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in the back and we're going to remove both of those bolts in the back that actually hold the caliper on. Just so you know, they are 12 millimeters, and the mounting bracket is a 17 millimeters. Once you break them loose by hand, you can just turn them and take them right out. Again, keep the screws because we're going to need to put them back on with those same screws. It's a little difficult getting the screws out. You can just rock the caliper slightly and they come out a lot easier. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to relocate this caliper. We're not going to let it hang. We're going to support it with a hanger from somewhere on the car itself, just to get it up and out of the way so that it's not in the in our line where we're working. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out those two bolts in the back that I told you about. They were the 17 millimeters that hold the mounting bracket on. So we're going to remove those. Once you break them loose, they can come out by hand. They're usually not very tight once you break them loose. Again, keep these nuts because the bolts, because we're going to need them to put them back on. Alright, and temporarily we're just going to relocate the mounting bracket to the side, but real important is to make sure that your slide pins on your mounting bracket slide the way they're supposed to. We're going to lubricate these later on. I'll show you that momentarily. Alright, so for now we're just going to put this to the side, and then we can take our rotor off the car. If the rotor doesn't come off, you can tap on it with the hammer, ever so lightly, right on the face right here. It'll come right off. And if that doesn't work, you take a bolt and you screw a bolt right into here, like that, and then you tighten it down, and you can get the rotor off by doing it like that. Most of the time, just by tapping on it, you can get it off. I usually get behind it with a pry bar and just hit it very lightly, and it usually comes right off. The only time you have problems are when they're extremely rusty, and in this case they're really not that rusty. But if they were, you can just continue to tighten that bolt in and it pops right out. Alright, so we're going to take these off. And we're going to take these off, and now we're going to resurface the rotors. Make sure that your face here is nice and clean and not rusty, because it'll affect the way that the rotor pulsates later on if you put it back together and there's rust on here. So let me resurface this, and in the meantime I'm going to show you how to replace the brake pads on the mounting bracket, change the hardware kit, and lubricate the sliders. So let me get the rotor cutting, and I'll come right back. I'm going to be replacing the hardware kit that we talked about before, and we're going to lubricate all the sliders to make sure everything slides properly. So we're going to take the brake pad out of the mounting bracket. They just pull right out. Same thing on this side here. Take this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove these clips right here. Take these off. And what we're going to do is, these develop a little bit of rust inside right here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clean a little bit of that rust away with a file or a piece of sandpaper, whatever you have. And then we're going to replace it with the new clips that come with it. Put it back on the same way you took it off. And just push it all the way down, and it locks right in place like that. Same thing on the other one here, just turn it around and you can take it off with a screwdriver and just pry it right off. Check the rust on here. This one has no rust at all, so we're good. And we're going to put the new clip back on, and it just pushes all the way down like that. Next thing we're going to do is a lot of the brake pads come with the lubricant for it, but I have the larger size because I use it so often. Just put a little bit of lubricant on the slide pins. Same thing on this one. Put a little bit on there like that. Put them back in. Push them all the way down. Make sure your rubber boots pop back up there below. These boots here, make sure they're on. Slides nice and easy. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that lubricant again and grease these up here so that the brake pads slide properly the way they're supposed to. Same thing on the other side. Just put a little bit on there, and a little bit on here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to slide our brake pads in to try to save us a minute later on. They just slide right in. And make sure you put the correct brake pad on. You can see this one has the indicator, the disc indicator, and as you can see, this one is actually a mirror image of it. So make sure you have the correct one, that the sensor is in the correct location. It is in, this is the correct one now, and we're going to put that on just like this. Put it in, turn it slightly, and you can push it, and it slides right in, especially when you have it with the silicone to lubricate everything. It makes it a little bit easier. Alright, we're good. Alright, make sure your other pad didn't slide out, and we're good to go. We're going to take it over to the car now, and I'm going to show you how to reattach it to the car and to get this job wrapped up. So let's get back over to the car. If we have that rotor cut, we're going to reinstall the rotor back onto the car. There's only one way it can go on, depending on where these holes are here. And you just put it back on, line everything up, it goes right on. And then you can screw it back in with your screwdriver. The bolts to hold the rotor onto the knuckle. I use a driver. You can use a regular screwdriver. A regular screwdriver is fine. And then you just go just a little bit to tighten them in. Same thing here. Alright. Then what we're going to do is the caliper that we previously put together and lubricated, we're going to put it back onto the car. We have the brake pads already caught in there, so let's get this back onto the car. Take our two 17mm bolts that we previously took out. Put the mounting bracket on in the car. Squeeze your brake pads just so that they don't fall out. And then you catch the bolts in the back by hand only. Don't screw it in with the ratchet until you have them all the way down and tight. Once you have both of them screwed in as far as you can go by hand, then you can bring your ratchet back and you can tighten them up so that they're snug. And I'll bring you over and I'll show you where those bolts were. See the two of them right here? This one here and the one up on top right there. Alright, they're both tight. Let's get the caliper back on and we'll get this wrapped up. We're just going to make sure that the caliper is pushed in, that the piston is pushed in as far as it can go. And the way to do that, it should be in fairly, almost as far as it has to go, but we're just going to make sure. And what you do is you put your brake pad in here. If you have a C-clamp, you can use a C-clamp. I don't use a C-clamp. I use a different type of tool, but there's lots of different ones out there to recess the pistons. You put your brake pads into the caliper like that, and then you just slide this piece into here. Any tool that you have to recess the caliper, and you tighten it, and you'll see it pushes the piston all the way back in, so it makes for an easy installation. Alright, that's it. It's pushed all the way in. Now we're going to mount the caliper back onto the knuckle, and we'll be all set. Again, the same thing when you put this on there. You just lay it in here like this. You push these slide pins back and forth just to line it up, and you put in the bolts that we previously took out, and you catch them only by hand until you got them all the way screwed down as tight as they can go by hand, and then you can use a ratchet. Let's snug it in. Same thing on the top one. All the way in. And that's it, you're all set. Let me just show you one thing you have to be careful of when you put it back together. Up on top here, you have to make sure that this piece, this slider right here, is not caught underneath this lip right here. Otherwise you'll have a pulsating pedal, you'll have a problem where it won't stop properly, and you'll be pulling your hair out. Alright, so that's it, we're all set. We have the rotor screws are tight, we have the mounting bracket tight, we tightened those 17mm up in the back, we tightened up these 12mm bolts to hold the caliper to the bracket, we greased and lubricated the brake pads and the sliding pins. That's it, we're all set. Alright, now we're going to go around to the other side and do the other side, and we're going to wrap this job up. Alright, thanks for watching, see you on the next one.